Good afternoon. This is a Friday afternoon. This is The Real Deal. I'm Gabby McCurry from Grant Estate Agents. Now, I wanted to give you a little bit of an update in terms of what I see happening in the market currently and, of course, my interpretation of the markets. The most commonly asked question we get in this industry, which also gets bandied around at barbecues, is, so Gabby, how is the market? Those four words. How is the market? Well, the answer is always has been and always will be, it depends. It depends where you are, it depends on your street, and it depends on who's selling. And it also depends on who's buying, and also, to a large degree of influence, it depends on who the agent is, and it depends on who's marketing the property and how it's being marketed. If you haven't got a budget and it's not being done properly, that's going to impact the price as well. So there's always a variation of answers. So it's not a question that we can answer very, very easily. However, I can take a snapshot and have a look at a generalization of what's going on in the market. And the best way to ascertain that is by looking at what's selling, what isn't selling, and what's taking longer to sell. How many new listings are coming on, and how many of those listings are selling, and also days on market. So properties are selling in a few days. If your phone's ringing hot, agents are calling you, they're door knocking, they've got a hot buyer ready to buy your house, chances are you're in a fairly strong market. When agents are really stretched out with lots more listings, chances are they've got a lot of stock on their hands and they're taking a little bit longer to sell. What are we physically seeing currently in Brisbane at the moment? Well, it's a little bit all over the place, because I've got two suburbs or two areas in particular. One's a 10-kilometre out of Brisbane area, and the other one is a 12 to 13-kilometre area out of Brisbane, and they're showing a very different picture. Now, the two suburbs I'm going to talk about, or the two areas, are around the Cannondale area, covering the Cannondale, Carina Heights, that sort of area, which we have done a lot of sales historically in for the last 8 years or so, since I've lived in Brisbane. And the other area is, of course, WintonManly, Winton West, Manly West, and those immediate areas around there. Two totally different pictures. In some degree, there's definitely some similarities, but in other areas, the numbers are quite different. So the WintonManly market, for example, is actually pretty strong at the moment. However, listings have been up. They've gone up by about 29%. Those are the ones we know about. What about the ones you don't know about? The properties that have been sold to a tenant living there, like one we did the other day in Manly, that was sold to someone that lived in the building and loved it. So a lot of that has been happening across the board, and that's the second one we've done in 2 months where we've sold to the tenant that's been living in the property. Interesting that. Obviously they have to pay a very market-related price, and we certainly wouldn't be doing it. It has to be an agreeable deal for the owner and, of course, the tenant. And tenants, in fact, know everything that's wrong with the property, so they're not necessarily the easiest people to sell a house to. So what's happening in WintonManly is the solds are actually down by 63%. So there's 63% less stock that is sold year on year in the WintonManly area. Listings are up by 29%. There's been a little bit of a spike in listings. Why would that be? Perhaps people deciding that they're wanting to offload an investment property, or perhaps they've decided they're wanting to move, or perhaps they're concerned possibly about prices falling. Those could be the reasons. But what we're finding across the board is days on market between this year and last year have been very, very consistent. On average, 27 days on the market. Now let's have a look at the area over the Cannondale. Now, August on August, new listings are down by down by 10%. That's a lot. So August to August, but in general, across the board, they're down by 29%. Not only are listings down, but also the sales are down, radically down, by about 67% to August year on year. So in other words, if you're an agent and you only focus on Cannondale, you've had a very, very tough year. Your sales are down and your listings are down, okay? Days on market's also blown out, so there's been a lot more legwork to get those properties sold. In fact, August, days on market in those suburbs, 51 days. Across the year, about 35 days has been the average for days on the market in that suburb of Cannondale. So that gives us an interesting picture. Agents are working hard, they've got less stock, and they've got less sales. So perhaps not a great time to consider a real estate career if you're a newcomer and you're wanting to get into the game. This is a very difficult market to break into the market in. Listings are down, sales are down, and days on market's blown out. So agents are now busier, there's more open homes, they're not going and playing putt-putt on weekends and going surfing down to the Gold Coast because they listed it on Monday and they sold it by Wednesday. We're actually seeing they're having to do the open homes, do the callbacks and do the hard drafts. They're worth every cent at the moment. They're working very hard for their commissions. Now, if you have a question about your own property, what's it worth? I'd love to help you. That's exactly what I love to do. So please send me a message via return email. I can tell you what your investment's worth. I can tell you what sort of rent you should be getting if you'd like us to do an audit on that. And I can also tell you what your principal place of residence that you're currently living in is worth. So if you have any questions, I'm here to serve you. That's what I love doing. So send me an email and I'll get back to you. Have a great weekend and we may very well see you one of these days.